Hello and welcome to Give and Take, the Virtues in Life. And today's topic is Lewy body dementia. The reason I decided to do this interview is because on January 20th of this year, my mother transitioned. Or you may want to say my mother died on January 20th. And so she had this disease called Lewy body dementia. And I thought it was important to bring light to it because it's something that can be misdiagnosed and not able to find out exactly what's wrong with your loved one. They may think it's Alzheimer's or just plain dementia, but Lewy body dementia comes with specific things that attention need to be paid to it. Her funeral was on January 28th, 8 days. It was 8 days after she transitioned, and that was actually the day of her birthday. And so it was a beautiful day. We had a wonderful ceremony, and so I wanted to reach out to the organization so that they can come and share about this disease, because I believe it to be very important. So at this time I will have our wonderful guest introduce herself, and so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me with you. I'm Angela Taylor. I'm the Director of Programs with the Lewy Body Dementia Association. And like you, I too had a family member who had this disease.
Okay, so maybe that's where we'll start. Share about how that was with your father, how, living with somebody with Lewy body dementia.
Well, my father was an engineer, and so when he started having problems with skills that were his technical skills, I knew something was off. And so we talked to his family doctor, then we went to see a neurologist, and we started going through the testing process of what might be going on. Mm-hmm. While we were with the neurologist, my dad described some nightmares he was having, and it turns out these nightmares happened to be one of the symptoms of Lewy body dementia. He was actually physically moving about in his dreams, and he would injure himself. And that is a sleep disorder that's very much associated with the presence of these Lewy bodies in the brain. These are these little tiny clumps of normal proteins that when they misfold, they start to disrupt the functions of the cells in the brain.
Right.
And so this was a condition that he had for many years, the sleep disorder that was actually part of Lewy body dementia.
Wow, because I remember my mother not sleeping very well. So all of this was, for some time, this takes time to progress. And when I look back and I see some of the symptoms that she had, I said, wow, this is what it was, and not knowing and understanding that she was actually going through it at that time. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I actually think that's one of the reasons so many people don't get diagnosed early, is that they may not have enough symptoms that point the way to it being diagnosed as Lewy body dementia. It often starts with memory problems or thinking problems that may look like Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
So for some people, that's their earliest symptom. For others, they might have visual hallucinations, along with changes in thinking. And so to a psychiatrist, that might look like a psychiatric disorder more than a cognitive disorder.
Right.
And some people start with symptoms that resemble Parkinson's disease. Around the same time, they also have problems with thinking. And so to a movement disorder doctor, that might look like Parkinson's disease. And so all of these symptoms are all part of Lewy body dementia, but unless they present in enough quantity, it might easily be diagnosed as something else first.
Correct, because that's what happened with my mother. They had diagnosed her with Parkinson's disease, and I'm saying, but I don't see any trembling or shaking, and sometimes they said that doesn't come with it, but I didn't see that. So, and the medication she was taking, she said it was making her sleepy, and she stopped taking it. So we went back to the doctor, and he said, okay, we'll try it again. And immediately, because she was a nurse, so she had some instincts of what felt right and what didn't, and so she stopped it. And as the drama would have it, she ended up falling, as I shared with you, and she ended up going to the, because that's also a part of it, you fall. She's falling a lot. And she ended up going to the emergency room, was in the hospital, met a wonderful doctor there, and Dr. Rabadi, wonderful doctor, and then he referred me to an excellent neurologist, and she was the one that got the correct diagnosis for my mother. And so once we got that, it was a smoother for my mother in regards to getting what she needed. And in my mother's case, she said no medication. So, and it worked for my mother. But, you know, each one has a different way that it has to be treated. So we have to be mindful of what is right for that person.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and I think you said something that was very telling, is that getting that diagnosis, knowing what you're actually dealing with, whether or not you're treating certain symptoms in certain ways, it just helps to understand and have context to put all of these experiences together and go, okay, this isn't just me. We really are dealing with changes in this area that are tied to this disease. And it makes it easier for people to cope.
Correct.
Because now they have the big picture. Instead of looking at certain symptoms in isolation and saying, well, what's causing this?
Right.
The thing about LBD is it affects so much about a person. It's not just thinking, it's not just movement, it includes behavior, sleep, and even certain functions of the body that are automated, like blood pressure management, temperature regulation, digestion. Some of these automated processes, they're managed by the autonomic nervous system, and they go haywire. They start to break down.
Yes.
And so there's all sorts of symptoms that might make life a little harder to deal with. And so getting that diagnosis allows you to move into appropriate treatment.
Correct.
It allows you to develop coping strategies and then help everybody else around you understand what you're going through.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that there's nothing to be ashamed of. At the time when my dad was alive, he didn't want anyone to know. And I was like, listen, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We have to share this because all it can do is help others, and especially other family members. They may have some symptoms. And, you know, like I have a family member who does have Parkinson's. But is it truly Parkinson's? I don't know. And and it's okay if one wants to accept it's Parkinson's for them, that's fine. But we just want to let people be aware that one thing is not necessarily the thing. It could be something else, like a Lewy body dementia or anything else for that matter.
Right. Well, I think you know, stigma is an issue that a lot of families struggle with.
Right.
Different cultures view dementia in different ways. I personally, I said to my dad, I said, I love you for who you are, not what you can do. And you will still be you. And so you have meaning in my world. You are important, and I still want to be with you. This is just a part of your life. It doesn't define who you are.
Right.
And so we worked around Lewy body dementia as much as we could and tried, instead of making it a central part of his life. Beautiful.
Very lovely. And so how would you share with family members who might be going through any kind of dementia, a family member or patient, what advice would you give them to deal with the family member?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say is that understand that they are a person going through a medical condition.
Correct.
And their behavior and their functional ability may change. And that it's our job as people who love them and who care for them to adapt to their needs instead of expecting them who are going through this cognitive change to be able to, we shouldn't expect them to adapt to us because they have a disease process we don't have. Right. And we're more capable of recognizing what they have, what they're dealing with, and accommodating their emotional needs, their functional changes, and even entering their reality if they're not oriented to what's really going on.
Correct. So go with it.
We can't always expect the other person to reorient to us.
I like that. You said go with their reality. So whatever that reality is, so don't fight them and say, no, that's not there. It's no, you're not seeing, you're crazy. What? No, just go with that. And I used to do that with my mother. I used to go with her reality, and she would bring up old, family members from a long time ago and call her sisters and brothers' names and all that. And she would have her coherent moments, which were very lovely. And she kept those behavior traits, like, you know, if you said Una, she said, "That's not my name. My name is Una." I used to love those moments.
You know, I absolutely cherish those times with my dad too.
Right.
Because you never knew. Sometimes it would seem like he wasn't paying attention. His eyes would be closed.
Exactly.
There would be conversation going on around him, and then out of nowhere, he would chime in,
Yes.
spot on to the conversation, and crack us all up.
Yes, it's very lovely. It was very lovely like that. So now let's talk a bit about the organization, how long you've been with it, and you know, where you're located and how one could get in touch with the LBD organization.
LBDA,
Yes,
right.
LBDA, yes.
Yeah. So the Lewy Body Dementia Association is based in Atlanta, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. Our website is the best place people can go to learn more about Lewy Body Dementia and to find support. So that is lbda.org. So
Okay.
lbda.org. Our mission is threefold. It's to provide support to the families who are dealing with Lewy body dementia. It's to educate everybody who needs to understand this disorder, and that includes the families, the general public, the media, healthcare professionals, etc.
Right.
And then lastly is to encourage and support and advance research. We have a lot of activities going on across our mission in all of these areas. We have a nationwide network of volunteers that we work with who run support groups in their local communities, and they provide
Nice.
one-on-one support to families by phone or by email. We have staff that run online support groups through our Facebook page. We really, as a small organization, we do quite a bit to provide resources nationally.
Right.
We're in our 15th year this year, which we find very exciting.
Lovely.
And it has been a wonderful journey for us to start with rather humble beginnings, as really a family volunteer-driven organization. It was just family caregivers in the beginning, working together to form LBDA.
Excellent.
And to have gotten to the place now where we really are working across a lot of different areas to foster awareness, support, knowledge of the disease, and to move research forward. It's very exciting.
I'm so glad that you're part of the organization because of your personal experience. And so you can really add a lot of benefit to that for people who are going through whatever they're going through. So I'm glad that you're there and that you've stayed with them for so long. And
well, thank you.
Yes, and you can hear it. You're passionate and you love what you do. And it's great. It's very, very beautiful. And I really appreciate that, you know, you're there. And so that's why it's very important for me to do this and to get this out there. Because remember, I was sharing to you, I went years ago to this elder care conference at Westchester County Center here in New York. And I remember they were talking, and I got up and I spoke. And I said my mother had Lewy body dementia. And afterwards, some people came up to me and said, "Thank you. Nobody talks about that." They were so glad that I got up and I shared that. So that stuck in my mind from that day. I haven't forgotten it. And so that's why I felt that the time was now to really share about the disease, and so that people can be aware of it and get educated about Lewy body dementia.
Exactly. You know, I said, and I shared this with you on the phone, I really believe that every family who is touched by this disease has an opportunity to make a difference, whether they are informing just their friends, their personal network, or they want to host perhaps a lunch and learn at work to tell people what this disorder is, or people like you who have a profession that allows them to bring some greater visibility to the disease can take that step. We have a tremendous team of professionals in our Atlanta office who are incredibly dedicated to bringing this disease out of the shadows. And our volunteers across the country, like I said, are many of them are LBD family caregivers. That even though their caregiving journey is over, they really want to stay involved in the mission and share with the next generation of caregivers what they've learned, so that that knowledge can benefit somebody else. You know, that
Exactly.
it's hard sometimes to find yourself in the caregiver role. Sometimes that happens suddenly because of a crisis. Sometimes
Yes.
it kind of slowly develops over time, and you don't realize until you're down the road a while that actually you're providing a lot more support to your parent than you might have in years past, but it's been
Right.
gradual. And that's a lot of skill development that you can then pass along. So I think LBD families are quite passionate in general, and you know, here through LBDA, they're supported by a wonderful host of professionals as well.
Excellent, excellent. So some of the education goes to, I know we talked about it being doctors, and who else do you educate on the Lewy body dementia?
Well, I'll give you an example. We're doing an event in Philadelphia in May, May 4th, and this event is on our website, where we're doing a full day conference that's tailored to both healthcare professionals and LBD families. And so this event is going to be appropriate for physicians, nurses, social workers, anybody who works with seniors who are perhaps care providers in long-term care settings or home care services. We really find that anybody who works with older adults can benefit from knowing more about LBD.
Excellent. Yeah, if I was around, I would have loved to have come to that. And I've said to you, if there's anything I can do, I'm here to support the organization in any way that I can, because I think that that's what I like to do. I like to give back in any way, because what you're doing is very, very, the organization, what they're doing is very essential. And I like when you have many organizations and who do these kinds of things, but it's like some just really shine more than others, I'm going to be honest. And you're an organization that shine, because it's one that's not really, it's not an easy one to talk about. It's not an easy one to go out there and educate people about. So you're an organization that shines, that really just brings that to the forefront. And it's because it's something that's taboo for some, still taboo in regards to, because I remember when my mother, and I look back at years ago, that the signs were there. And I remember I'd taken my mother, I'd split them both up. I'd taken my mother on a little vacation trip, took Dad on a little vacation trip. And I remember going there was a pool, and I just had my feet wading in the pool, and she got so upset with me. And I was mad at her. You know, when I think of that, I said, oh my goodness, it was from then, it was starting. Because I didn't know what she was talking. So this was something that she, you know, in her mind, that what I was doing was wrong. And people were looking at me like I was doing something wrong, and she made it all big. And I remember being so upset with her. And I think it's important for me to say that and be honest, because I was mad with her.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand what was going on.
Right. Right. Those early days are very confusing, I think, for everybody. And it is often only hindsight where we really can see clearly what our loved ones were going through. And then understand that was the beginning. You know, my dad had that sleep disorder for probably 20 years.
Yeah, my mother
before
too.
he developed dementia.
Yeah.
And when he developed dementia, within that year, it had gotten much worse. But there were other signs as I looked back, especially as I got more involved in helping him. I could see changes in his handwriting.
Yes.
Dad was a bit of an archivist. He kept a lot of past records.
My mother was like that too.
I could see his handwriting change.
Right.
I could see the number of errors in his checkbook.
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
You know, his ability to do things, you know, using technology got to be harder and harder.
Right.
And some of those things we knew at the time that he was dealing with some type of cognitive impairment.
Sure.
But a lot of them we didn't know in the moment what was causing them.
Yeah.
So I think that when families see warning signs that start to happen repeatedly, that's when it's really important that they talk with their loved ones, and then they go with them to talk to the doctor.
Yeah,
because really doctors rely on the family's perspectives and reports on what they've seen changing in somebody. It's not just what the person themselves are experiencing, but they need the family's perspective as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't see that until I had moved my parents from one city to another city, and it wasn't until I was going through the things I saw how my mother was writing the checks. I said, "Oh my goodness, here it is," and she would burn herself, and she was cooking, and she would set off the smoke alarm and all this stuff. My dad was getting mad at her, and it's like all these things were just missed.
Right.
And not until but I knew, because I had to move her out because she walked out of the building one time. But I was able to catch up with her, and she said she heard music and all these things. She heard the music. Funny thing, in the music, the church was playing music, but then I knew, so I moved her into a more. It was one of these homes, one of these apartments that they take care of themselves, but they had security 24 hours a day. So, and she started to walk out. It was getting worse. It was progressing. She would walk out of the apartment. I had to pay for somebody to take care of her in the home, because I wanted my dad at the time to be active and going out to work and doing all that. And so I paid for someone to watch her while he was doing that. But then it just progressed, and then she had to go into the nursing home.
Right. Well, I think it's really important that, that families recognize that they do know their loved ones very well.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to see changes in behavior that will be risky. And they've got to trust themselves, even when they don't want to trust what they're thinking.
Correct.
They really are the ones who are going to be the frontline defense for safety, for medical care, advocating for their loved ones in the hospital with physicians who may not know this particular disorder. Families really, are a huge component of living a safe and quality life with LBD.
That was very important, what you just said, that the family members are important in really getting to the nitty-gritty of what's going on, because you can share with the professionals in regards to, and then they'd be able to see a bigger picture. And I was able to do that with the doctor, because he said to me, he says, "Are you a nurse?" I says, "No, I'm not a nurse. Not now, I'm not a nurse anyway. I don't know about before." But he said, "Because you're so knowledgeable," because I educated myself about my parents, about myself, everything. I always look to see what's going on. I do research, so I go ready with already a lot of knowledge. So this way, I'm not being at anyone's mercy. And so that's very important that you're saying that family members are key in keeping and seeing what's going on so they can share with the professionals. So, yes.
I think in LBD, one of the things that many families are surprised at is that it's a disorder that still hasn't become mainstream enough for all healthcare professionals to be familiar with.
Right.
And we find ourselves in the place of having to educate people that we would think would know about LBD, but who may not work with older adults all the time. And so this is not a disease that they're going to be familiar with.
Correct.
So we do have to be self-educated, which is why LBDA is really committed to bringing information to LBD families through our website, through webinars, through print materials, etc. Because they have to be well informed to be good advocates and care partners.
Exactly.
And they have to be willing to bring that information to healthcare professionals. I would say, especially in a hospital setting.
Yes.
They'll meet a whole host of professionals who may not know what LBD is.
Correct.
And their first job in the hospital setting is going to be to provide that education.
And it's funny because you're saying in the hospital setting, because even though my mother went into the nursing home, I had stuck with the notion that there should be no medication. And the doctor was very lovely and said, "If you have any questions, you just consult me, ask me, and I had called her when they said about giving her some. She says, "No, it's not good for well, my mother was not good for her because of it just makes it worse." So I just followed with that. And so it was very nice that the doctor was still given, having the continuum with me, even though she was no longer a patient, that she still went that extra step to consult with me so that I could do the best thing for my mother. And I appreciate that very much of her. I really do.
That's very nice.
Yes.
I think in LBD there are a lot of medications that can make a positive benefit to the person with LBD and their family caregiver. And so one of the things that we really recommend is that if the person can tolerate treatments for cognition, for their, for example, depression and apathy are very common in not just LBD, but other forms of dementia.
Right.
Treating some of these symptoms can really add to their quality of life. Some treatments are needed to make movement easier, so treating the motor symptoms so that they're not stiff and rigid.
Right.
We want to pursue those options when they're really needed. However, in LBD, one of the unique qualities about it is that people have these extreme sensitivities to certain medications.
Right.
So it's not an easy balancing act.
It's not, no.
And certain medications can be, quite frankly, quite dangerous if they're not prescribed carefully.
Exactly.
So it is, again, this goes back to the whole point of education. When you're dealing with a disorder that's this complex, the healthcare professionals and the families all really need to understand the implications that certain medications will have.
I'm glad you mentioned about the stiffness, because I remember my mother at the end, she became contractured. And so that happens too, that the body becomes stiff. And so it's many things. And remember you had mentioned about vitamins, how a lack of certain vitamins can bring these things on. So that's an important piece there that I have found out when we were moving. These two young men, they said to me, their mother had some kind of cognitive what I want to say, regression, and they were saying, it's this vitamin, but if I'd known that, it could, we never know. But all this information is important, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And that's, we always encourage families to first start with their primary care doctor.
Yes.
Because cognitive impairment can be caused by a whole host of things, some of which can be treated and a person can go back to their normal functioning. Vitamin deficiency is one of them. Other medical illnesses like a thyroid condition can cause it. And so when you treat the underlying condition, if it's just a temporary medical condition that can be resolved, then they can go back to their normal lives. It's when there are neurodegenerative processes going on in the brain that can't be resolved, then they need to move to the next level of care and really be seeing a neurologist so that they can get a really thorough diagnosis and a careful care plan. Beautifully said,
beautifully said. So do you have anything else that you would like to share with the viewers in regards to Lewy body dementia, anything that you think would really help them?
Well, I think the one thing that I, as a family caregiver, found is that it's a difficult disease to walk down the road alone with. And so I really encourage all families to find and build a very strong support system for themselves. That's going to include a network of family members to provide help. It might involve community services that can give them some relief for the caregiving work that they've got to do, but also to find resources for emotional support.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So local support groups, online support groups.
Right. So I have to wrap up now, but thank you. That was a very engaging interview, and many will be served through it and gain a lot. So I want to thank you for coming on, and to my wonderful viewers, your level of consciousness is the gateway to the future. Thank you.